Tell me, Mr. Carter, how exactly did you manage to build an empire you are so clearly unqualified to run? Judge Richard Calloway barely concealed his smirk as he leaned forward, elbows resting on the polished oak bench. His voice was smooth, patient even, but underneath it lay something else: dismissal, condescension, the quiet certainty that this entire proceeding was beneath him. Malcolm Carter sat in the defendant's chair, his fingers laced together so tightly they had gone numb. He had prepared for this moment. He had known the fight would not be fair. But the word still hit like a gut punch. Unqualified. The word lingered in the air, heavy, deliberate. It was not about credentials. He had the degrees, the experience, the empire. A billion-dollar tech firm that had revolutionized cybersecurity. Yet, to this man, to men like him, none of it mattered. His very presence in this courtroom, on trial for a lawsuit he knew was built on lies, was proof that no amount of success could buy his way out of scrutiny. Malcolm exhaled slowly, forcing himself to meet Calloway's gaze. "Your Honor, my qualifications speak for themselves." "Do they?" Calloway tilted his head, feigning curiosity. "See, from where I sit, it seems to me that when someone hands a child a loaded weapon, they may shoot their shot, but that does not make them a marksman. It just makes them dangerous." There was a quiet murmur in the courtroom, barely audible, but Malcolm felt it. The shift, the weight of perception tilting against him. The plaintiff's attorney, Stephen Whitmore, smirked at his legal team. He did not need to say anything. Calloway was doing the work for him. Malcolm's lawyer, Olivia Brooks, stiffened beside him. "Objection, Your Honor," she said, her voice controlled but sharp. "That analogy is inappropriate and prejudicial." Calloway waved her off with a casual flick of his hand. "Sustained. But let's move on, shall we?" He turned his gaze back to Malcolm. "Tell me again about how you came into your initial funding." It was a familiar line of attack. They wanted to frame him as a fraud, a man who had somehow stumbled into his own success, who had been handed something he did not deserve. Never mind the years of work, the sleepless nights, the patents with his name on them. Malcolm forced himself to smile. "I built my company the same way anyone does, with intelligence, strategy, and perseverance. If you are suggesting anything else, Your Honor, then perhaps you should clarify what you mean." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Calloway did not like being challenged. His jaw tightened, but he recovered quickly, his voice light. "Oh, I think I have all the clarification I need." It was a warning, a promise, and Malcolm knew what it meant. Calloway ruled against him that afternoon. He did not even pretend to hide the bias in his decision. It was as swift as it was brutal, siding entirely with the plaintiff, a former business partner who had fabricated claims of intellectual theft. A man Malcolm had mentored, a man who had sat in his office and learned from him, only to turn around and wield the system like a weapon. The judgment was devastating, financially, legally, but, more than that, it was personal. It was the confirmation of something Malcolm had always known, but never wanted to accept. The rules were different for him, and no matter how much he built, no matter how high he climbed, there would always be someone waiting to take it from him. 1 year later, it was supposed to be a simple case, an oversight in tax filings, a clerical error. That was what the official report said. But Malcolm knew better. He had watched it happen before. He had seen the subtle ways the system turned on men like him. A harmless mistake, magnified, a procedural misstep, weaponized. Only this time, The man standing before the bench was not him. It was Judge Richard Calloway, and Malcolm was the one sitting in the judge's chair. Judge Richard Calloway stood at the defense table, hands clasped in front of him, his expression carefully composed. But Malcolm saw it. The tightness in his jaw, the rigid way he held himself, the way his gaze flickered across the courtroom, searching for the power he once had, and realizing, for the first time, that it was gone. The irony was exquisite. The man who once questioned Malcolm's qualifications now stood accused of financial misconduct, fraud, misappropriation of funds, and a pattern of using his judicial power for personal gain. It was all there, laid out in the thick case file before Malcolm. And yet, despite everything, Malcolm did not feel triumphant. He should have relished this moment, watching Calloway stripped of his authority, forced to stand in the very courtroom where he had humiliated others. But all he felt was a quiet, simmering weight in his chest, because he knew how this would go. Calloway would not be treated the way Malcolm had been treated. His former colleagues, the same system that had once shielded him, would do everything in their power to soften the blow. The media would frame him as a respected judge who had made some mistakes, not a man who had abused his position for years. Malcolm had learned long ago, justice did not move the same for everyone. Still, he had a job to do. He picked up the case, file, and flipped through the pages slowly, deliberately. "Judge Calloway," he said, letting the title hang in the air for a beat longer than necessary. "It seems we have quite a situation here." Calloway's lawyer, a sharp-eyed man in fictitious, a navy suit, stepped forward. "Your Honor, my client is prepared to fully cooperate." "I was not speaking to you," Malcolm cut in, his voice measured but firm. The lawyer hesitated. Calloway, for the first time, looked directly at Malcolm. It was not the same look of thinly veiled condescension he had worn a year ago. This was something else, something wary. Malcolm met his gaze evenly. "Let me ask you something, Judge. How exactly did you manage to build such an esteemed career while being so clearly unqualified to hold it?" The words landed with an impact that rippled through the silent courtroom. A flicker of something crossed Calloway's face. Was it anger? Embarrassment? Recognition? Malcolm could not tell, and he did not care. He set the case file down. "This court will review the charges against you thoroughly, as it does with any defendant," he continued. "And as you once reminded me, when someone is handed power, it does not automatically make them fit to wield it." He let the words sit, let them breathe in the silence. Calloway's hands twitched. Whether he wanted to lash out or defend himself, he did neither. He knew better. He had sat where Malcolm sat now. He understood the weight of a judge's words. Malcolm leaned back slightly, his fingers resting against the polished wood of the bench. "You will be given the same fair and unbiased trial you once denied others." His tone did not shift, but there was something undeniable in it. A promise, a reckoning. He could have crushed Calloway the way he had been crushed, could have dismissed him with the same ease, let the bitterness fuel his decisions. But that was the difference between them. Malcolm did not need to be like Calloway to hold him accountable. Justice, real justice, was not about revenge. It was about balance, about making sure that, this time, the system did what it was meant to do. He turned to the court clerk. "Let's proceed." Calloway exhaled, the smallest sign that he had been holding his breath. And for the first time, Malcolm saw it. Genuine fear in his eyes, not of losing his position, not of the legal battle ahead, but of facing a system that, for once, would not be bending in his favor. It was not victory, not exactly, but it was something close. The gavel struck. The case had begun.